Starting something new is easy. Sticking with it, that's where most people fail. And it's often not because they're lazy, it's because they don't know how to keep going when motivation fades. As a senior project manager, my job is literally about finishing things. It's about managing projects, keeping things on track, and ultimately making sure that stuff gets done. But in my personal life, I often struggled for many years with finishing things that I've started. I would often start things and then I would often quit very early on until I discovered one simple truth. Motivation isn't the problem, something else is the problem. Today, I'm going to break it down for you, so subscribe so you don't miss future videos. Let's dive right into it. First point is what I refer to as the startup energy trap. Most people think that starting something is hard, but oftentimes sticking with it and finishing it is the hard part. The excitement and motivation that you feel in the beginning is going to fade away pretty fast. So if we take, for example, New Year's resolutions, that's something that we're all familiar with, and we know exactly how those go. Super excited in the beginning of the year, and by the time that February and March rolls around, we don't even think about our resolutions anymore. Most people fail not because they don't know how to start. Most people fail because they don't often know how to sustain the effort of sticking with something. Motivation, from what I've learned, is unreliable, and you need a source of fuel that is much stronger than motivation in order to stick with something and finish something or stick with something in the long term. Which brings us into the second point, and that is the real reason you struggle to finish things is most likely because you are chasing the excitement instead of committing to the actual work of doing the thing. People jump from idea to idea, hobby to hobby, project to project, because it's exciting to always start something new, to always start something fresh. Often people are afraid of the hard work that it takes to stick with one thing and actually see one thing all the way through. The beginning is always going to be fun. The end is always going to be rewarding, but there is the messy middle. There's the middle part where everyone is afraid to get into. I have been afraid to get into that messy middle in a lot of things, and I still am in a lot of ways, but now I am very much conscious of it. So I try to be conscious of it and use these tools to make sure that I actually power through that messy middle and get to that rewarding end. So, for example, writing a book, launching a business, starting a podcast, growing a YouTube channel, whatever goal you have in mind, there's always a point where it's super exciting. And then there comes the dreaded point where it feels very boring. It feels very repetitive and it's frustrating and it almost feels pointless. That is the point where all the magic happens. One thing I've learned about successful people, and I've learned about success and what high performers in high performing corporate environments understand, is that the work is in the boring. Hard work and success are very boring. They're very boring. They're very monotonous because it requires you to be very disciplined and focused and to do a lot of the same things over and over and over again every single day repetitively in order for you to actually improve and get a result in something. High performers know how to push through the messy middle. People who are not necessarily high performers often quit before this messy middle. I used to be that person, and with wanting to strive for more in my life and to become a high performer, I had to learn to live in the messy middle, and I had to learn to enjoy the monotony and the boring nature of it, because the reward at the end is going to feel very nice, but you have to be able to endure and to have a big appetite for that messy middle. This can be applied in several areas in your life, and that leads us into point number 3, There is a strategy that I use that helps me finish anything really that I'm doing. And this strategy is something that honestly might not be for everybody, and it might be tough to do, and it very much requires a lot of mental fortitude and a lot of self-awareness. This strategy is what I call the public commitment hack, aka the no escape route, meaning that we often finish things that we believe are non-negotiable, not things that we think are nice to have. So when we put ourselves in a corner and we put ourselves in a position where we have to deliver something, oftentimes you're going to activate and deliver it. At least that's how I have navigated my life. Usually when I have done big things in my life, or when I've accomplished goals, it's because I've been put in a situation where I'm essentially in a place where I either do it or I run, and ultimately I choose to do it. That is kind of extreme, but you can tone that down and actually use that tool as well in your life to publicly commit to what you want to accomplish. The reason why this works is because it tries to take away the excuse, and it tries to make quitting impossible. When you tell your goal to somebody or to people, it creates a level of accountability because now people expect you to deliver on that. And when you set a deadline on that consequence and you communicate that to people, that adds in setting that expectation and removes any type of excuse or easy way for you to move away from that. I'll give you a quick example with me practicing mixed martial arts. So I started practicing mixed martial arts about 2 years ago, and I wanted to compete, but for the longest time ever, I was telling myself this, that I'm going to compete when I felt ready. But it wasn't until my coach approached me and he asked me if I was ready to compete, because he knew that I was ready to compete. And at that moment, I had to publicly state to him that I was ready to commit, which he then publicly stated to the gym that I was going to commit to the fight. And ultimately we signed the contract, and the organization publicly announced to everybody on social media that I was going to fight along with other people. At that point, a lot of people now had expectation, not in a bad way, not in a good way, just expectation that I was going to fight. And that drove me to give me incentive to stick with it, because it became a public commitment at that point. And the same thing is happening with posting content on YouTube and creating content on YouTube. I'm putting it out there publicly and publicly stating what I'm trying to do. So it helps to hold me accountable as well. So the more painful quitting is, the more you're likely going to stick with it and actually see it all the way through. If you're struggling to finish things, you're not alone. But what happens when you fall off track? You don't have to start over from scratch. And in this next video, you'll find that I'll show you a way that you can reset hard and start back as soon as possible. So watch this video right here.